How much will the Goose be cooking in Troy? As Locked On Sunbelt.
You are Locked On Sunbelt, your daily podcast on the Sunbelt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. Today, we continue our feature with the Belt Beat. We talked to Josh Boutwell from the Troy Messenger. He's been covering the Trojans going into his ninth season. And of course, he had those back-to-back seasons as Sunbelt champions. We'll talk to him about that. But Goose Crowder is healthy, apparently, as healthy as he's ever been. Who's going to be running the football for the Troy Trojans? They also have, and apparently, what could be an explosive passing attack. They have some very athletic wide receivers, and they are very deep in the tight end room. I want them to go 5 wide. I don't think that's going to happen. It won't stop me from asking about it. And we do ask about the health and future of one Chris Lewis. So he is joining us next. He is the beat writer. He's on the Belt Beat for the Troy Trojans. He works for the Troy Messenger. He is Josh Boutwell, and he is Locked On Sunbelt. Well, welcome back to another edition of Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. We continue with our feature on the Belt Beat. We bring in our buddy Josh Boutwell from the Troy Messenger. Troy with their second season under Jared Parker. We'll see if the Goose is cooking. We're always thrilled to have Josh on the Sunbelt, on the Locked On Sunbelt podcast. Thank you for your time, Josh. How has Goose looked in fall camp? Because, and I always wonder why we call it fall camp. It's not fall yet, and it's got to be extremely hot in Troy, in Alabama, in August. How has he looked? Because it's obviously his job. No pretense about it. There was no quarterback competition. Last year starting quarterback left because there was no quarterback competition. How has Goose looked?
Yeah, to first off with the fall camp thing, interestingly enough, the first 2 days you would melt, and then for about a week and a half we had the most unseasonally cool August I can remember because of all the rain. So there was a couple of days where it was legitimately like 70 something degrees out there. So it was shocking. So
that's kind of good and bad for the coaches, right? Because now they can actually get some work in without worrying about the heat. But at the same time, they actually like the heat because they want to be ready for the season because they know Labor Day weekend they're going to be toasted.
Yeah, that's actually the first day. That was one of the things we talked about was the heat, because Jared Parker said he didn't think that they acclimated to the heat well enough last year. Yeah. So that was something they really, really focused on this summer, and he felt like in those first couple of days they did really well. There wasn't guys having to tap out of practice in the first few days. There was a couple guys puking, but not as many as the year before. Sure. But you're going to see that in fall camp.
Yeah, but that's going to happen. You can be prepared for that as much as you can, and still it's going to happen. You can be in as good a shape. You know, professionals are the same way. You can be in as good a shape as possible, and still your body's not used to it. No. Right? It's the difference between working out and playing football.
Yeah, for sure. But I do think it helped with last year. You know, they were replacing so many different players.
Right.
The bulk of the team has been here since at least spring. So those guys got to work out in that Alabama May and June heat. So that definitely helps.
So how has Goose looked?
Goose looks great. He has talked about his health in terms of not just the head injury, but like he feels like he's in the best shape he's ever been in. And you could see absolute control of the offense since spring. I mean, and all the guys talk about him in that same way. You know, he's the leader in the offense. There's no, you mentioned there's been no competition. There's no secret. Goose Crowder is the starting quarterback. And I feel like the offense will go as he goes. But he's looked really good during the fall camp.
So, again, hashtag always a bright side. When you decide you're backing out because of a concussion, right, there is no – I don't know of one. There's really no rehab to do. You just had to kind of wait it out, right? You can't get better from a concussion by doing something, right? There's no rehab to go through. So as long as you can deal with the light and working out, you can get bigger, you can get stronger, you can get faster, you can sit there and watch film, right? And so as long as he can sit there and watch film, and work out, he can get his body better and healthier. So he was probably, if I can say that, he was probably as healthy as he's ever been when he started working out in January that he's ever been. His body wasn't beat up from playing football.
Yeah, for sure. And I've talked to Troy fans about this, where I think people should be as proud of their coaches that they held him out when they did, because I can assure you he probably could have been cleared at the end of the year to play. And he will tell you he wanted to play, but they protected him and kept him off the field, which I'm sure none of them wanted to do in terms of winning and losing and things of that nature, but they protected his future. And that's something that I think everybody should be proud of.
Well, that's a good job. And that's a lot of pressure, right? Because at the time, I talked about it for a while, forget about the light in the tunnel. There was no tunnel, right? It was ugly. And then all of a sudden Arkansas State happened and there was a light in the tunnel. And then Georgia Southern happened. And again, we go back to that Cajuns game. It was a one-score game, right? I know there's a couple of turnovers in the fourth quarter, and then they finished up strong. So they didn't win like 3 out of the last 4. So they finished up pretty strong, and I say this all the time. I'm much more of a reasons guy than an excuses guy. When you're down to the third string quarterback, there's a reason that you're not winning, right? There's a reason for that.
Third string walk-on quarterback.
Yes. So that, I know the coaches don't want to make excuses, but, if we're down to 4, if we're down 4 out of our 5 offensive linemen, well, why aren't you running the ball well enough? Well, we got our backup offensive line in. That's a reason. They're not going to make it an excuse, but I'm going to tell you it's a reason. And so guess what? By the time you're into practice, you only have limited practices and limited time for Martin Caldwell to get better. And the time he's going to get better is not really practice, it's the games. And so it took him, God forbid, it took him a month to get going. And by the time he did, he was pretty good.
Yeah, for sure. And we don't talk about it enough as we talk about players' confidence. But when you have a new coach's confidence, being more comfortable in their position. And that was something I've actually commented to Jared Parker during fall camp, is, to me, he looks more comfortable. He looks more confident in everything that he's doing. And I definitely, I don't know what language I can use here, but I didn't see as many ass chewings last year as I've seen in the first part of this camp. And part of it is I think he feels that his team can be very, very good. He really does feel that way. You can just talking to him, you can see it. And part of that is just he's more confident in what he can and can't do, and he's more comfortable in everything.
Well, when you know the way to the locker room off the Trojan walk now compared to last year, that's going to give anybody more confidence. I love that story.
For sure.
That's a great story. All right. Let's take a time out. We come back and we continue our conversation with the Troy Messenger beat writer for the Troy Trojans, Josh Boutwell. We talk about who's running the football for the Troy Trojans. That's been their bread and butter over the last handful of years, especially during their back-to-back Sun Belt championships. And it seems to be a wide open competition. We will do that right after I tell you about Rougiet. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis, maybe even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rougiet Ready. Rougiet Ready is a next-generation prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rougiet's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average in 15 minutes, and effects can last up to 36 hours. So you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. If traditional options haven't worked, Rougiet may be the best answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch. I love that it's completely online. Rougiet connects you with a board-certified doctor and ships your treatment discreetly to your door. You can even read real customer reviews on their site. It's helping a lot of people feel more confident and present in the moment. Head to Rougiet.com/LockedOnCollege and use code LockedOnCollege to get 15% off today. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnCollege and use promo code LockedOnCollege for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rougier website for full safety information. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. Let's continue our conversation with Josh Boutwell with the Troy Messenger. He is on the belt beat. Who's going to be running the football for the Troy Trojans? And then we'll look to the other side of the ball defensively. Who is leading the Trojans defense? He is Josh Boutwell. He is on the belt beat, and he is Locked On Sunbelt. So we're looking forward to seeing Goose Crowder here and see what he can do. All right, but, Troy – their bread and butter, like everybody else in college football, for the most part, is going to be running the football. And they did it spectacularly for a couple of years with Kamani Vidal. I think he just scored another touchdown in the Sun Belt Championship game from a couple of years ago. We had Damian Green. He apparently got a little money to go play for Ole Miss. The third leading rusher, from what I saw from last year's Troy's team, was the second string quarterback. And so he's no longer there. Who is running the football for the Troy Trojans this year?
You tell me.
That's why I had you on there, big guy.
I think it's, especially early on, I think it'll definitely be more of a running back by committee. And you mentioned Kamani. I'm pretty sure Appalachian State fans are still having nightmares about him. But Trey Cooley from Georgia Tech transfer, he is very much kind of a home run back. He's a very good receiver out of the backfield. I've seen him break off several 40, 50-yard runs and team drills, scrimmages, that sort of thing. And then Jordan Lovett's another guy that they are very, very high on. I think those two are the first two kind of in my head that pop out. But I really feel like we're probably going to see a little bit more leaning on the passing game just because of the talent that is kind of out there. I know people think about losing, your number one receiver to Power Four schools 3 years in a row. Troy just keeps churning them out, and I feel like maybe this is the best group over like total receivers and tight ends that we've seen. Since I've been covering Troy. It's impressive. There's some athletes.
Well, we'll get to that because we have a suggestion. I'm not sure it's going to be fulfilled. Maybe a wish, more like a wish. But so are you telling me Cooley? Because and maybe it changed because I think the first year with John Summerall and the running game was we're going to run the ball, we're going to play defense. We don't necessarily have to score, but we're going to flip the field and we'll get a couple of first downs and flip the field and play defense. And if Kamani hits one, great. Second year, Kamani was hitting more of them, whereas you're saying Cooley's got a better chance of being more explosive and maybe more explosive than Kamani, because Kamani was like, we're gonna churn out a couple of first downs here, and if he hits one, great. But you're saying Cooley, if he gets through that hole, he may be gone.
Yeah, he's not. He's definitely not in terms of the bulk, the size of Kamani. And he's faster for sure. Yeah. And so is Lovett. Lovett, both those guys are kind of home run hitting type of running backs.
So now, as we're talking to Josh Boutwell, the Troy Messenger, Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day, I believe it was Jared Parker who loves his tight end room, all right? And I asked Goose about this, Sunbelt Media Days, how do we convince them to go 5 wide? Because he mentioned 5 tight ends. They are 5 deep at tight end. Can we go 5 wide with the tight end?
No.
Can you imagine 2 linebackers covering tight ends in the slot?
There's a couple of those guys I do not want to see split out wide, but
they would be uncoverable, Josh. There's no way you're going to put a linebacker in the slot and have him downfield. Someone's going to be open by 20 yards.
One guy for sure that if he can stay healthy, he's going to be an animal is Ethan Connor. Yeah. People have not even scratched the surface of seeing what this guy can do athletically. When you see him on the practice field, he stands out. And I think the big thing is him staying healthy. And if he is one of those guys that's a tight end that, he might be in line blocking on one play, but you can split him out in the slot. And that is a matchup nightmare. Absolutely.
All right, then. So who are some of those wide receivers that you're talking about?
Ra Thomas is the first guy that you think of.
What'd you say his name is? Ra?
Ra. That's a nickname. I can't pronounce
okay.
it.
All right.
Yeah, no, he used to play at Georgia. He's a Eufaula kid. Athletically is insane. It's obvious when you see him out there. Roman Mothershed is a guy, a massive kid. Reminds me a lot of Rajay Johnson a little bit. He lives for blocking. If you go out there and watch them in practice, the trash talk, you see him trash talking, it's all about busting a guy in the mouth blocking. So he lives for the blocking part of it. Trey Taylor is probably the fastest player on the team. Extremely fast, extremely explosive. Peyton Higgins, he's probably going to be the slot guy. He's definitely kind of a possession receiver and one of the more veteran receivers. He's the leading receiver coming back. And then Jawan Boyd is a local kid who I think is going to do a ton of big things in his career. So, there's just a ton of athleticism, a ton of speed in that wide receiver room.
Then we got some good news and bad news with the wide receiver room with Troy. Chris Lewis retiring from football, but overall a healthy man surviving cancer.
For sure. And every day at practice, we see him out there coaching those kids up. That's his.
Okay.
That coaching is his next relationship. He went out to Tulane this summer and spent some time with Coach Summerall's staff, and he's a coaching intern this fall. So that's really cool. Man, it sucks that he's not able to play anymore. I feel like he was the guy that we were going to see on Sundays one day. But just for him to be healthy, that's all that matters. And it's awesome to see him still out there smiling and cutting up with those guys.
And then, not to belabor this point, but you guys kind of went through this together. Same time, you guys both went through cancer together, and you guys kind of leaned on each other. You said he called you all the time while he was going through his own situation. What was that like?
Yeah, I've told this story before. He would, after I got diagnosed, and he would send me DMs and just say, "Hey man, I love you, brother. Just keep your head up." And he would constantly do that kind of stuff.
And he's the kid. He's the young one. Yeah.
He's the kid. Yeah.
Yeah.
And all the while he's still doing this, I found out later he had been diagnosed and no one knew yet.
No.
So it just tells you the type of kid he is. So he definitely helped me. And I think his story is something that a lot of young kids, a lot of players can look up to for sure.
And just to make sure you're healthy as well.
Yes. They won't let me say cancer-free, but no sign of disease. I had my first scan. I'll have my second scans next month. I had my colonoscopy. Everything's been clean so far. So far, so good. Been able to go watch practices, be out in the hot sun once again. I got that one of my goals last year. I wasn't able the first few games. It was hard for me to get out to the high school games just because I was still so exhausted and just beat up from everything. At the very end of the year, I went to Charles Henderson and Eufaula game, and then I actually took a picture when I climbed the steps, like the first stadium steps I've climbed since all of this. So I'm getting back there.
We hate climbing those.
Yes,
we hate climbing those stadium stairs, and all of a sudden you're like, "Well, that was a lot of fun."
For sure.
It brings perspective. As someone who had a couple of colonoscopies, because I am that age, it is the best nap you ever have. The worst thing about it is that they wake you up because they got to get you in and out. If they just let me sleep, I wouldn't complain.
The worst part about it is the prep.
Well, I see that. I see that as a weight loss opportunity. That's
a rough one.
As long as it all is done by the time I go to bed, I don't have any problem. And for those who, the goal, you need to have the examination first thing in the morning because you can't eat the next day. So you don't make the appointment for 2 p.m. You need to have the appointment. My last colonoscopy was at like 6 a.m.
Yeah, me too.
First one in.
Me too.
Yeah. All right. I don't know how we got on that topic, but let's move on. So let's cross over. We're talking to Josh Boutwell from the Troy Messenger. Lockdown Sunbelt, your teams every day. Let's flip it over to the defensive side. Troy's also been known for a stingy defense. For the time being, the NCAA's all-time leading tackler, Carlton Marshall, still atop that list. Former Troy Trojan, Mobile native. Who is leading this team on the defensive side?
Jordan Stringer, inside linebacker, and Luis Medina, defensive lineman. Those are kind of the alphas on that side of the ball. And again, I feel like this defense definitely during fall camp they have been stellar. I mean, it's been pretty impressive. And one of the things coming out of last year that you knew they would have to do better was force turnovers. I want to say they forced 9 turnovers, I think, all year last year. You can't win like that. And that has been a huge focus. They talk about, and it's not just fall camp, they talk about they're going to do this every meeting, every practice session. They're going to have, working on stripping the balls, going for picks, things of that nature all year long. So that's been a huge focus. But, Stringer and Medina are the big alphas on there. I feel like Stringer and Steven Catledge is another guy that if he can stay healthy, he's going to be a big-time player this year. Those 2 inside linebackers, I feel like, may be the better linebacking duo in the Sun Belt.
Let's take one more time out. We'll come back and wrap up our conversation with the Troy Messenger's Josh Boutwell. Are the Trojans 3, 2, 1. Let's take one more time out. We'll come back and wrap up our conversation with the Troy Messenger's Josh Boutwell. What was it like covering the back-to-back Sun Belt champions? And are the Troy Trojans Sun Belt contenders in Jared Parker's second season? The answer may surprise you. It surprised me. We'll tell you that right after we tell you about Open Phone and Prize Picks. If you're running a business, every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you needed a service. If the first person didn't answer, did you wait? Probably not. You moved on. That's why you need Open Phone, so you never miss an opportunity to connect with your customers. Open Phone is the #1 business phone system designed to streamline and scale your customer communications. Do you juggle 2 phones just to keep business and personal calls separate? Open Phone solves that instantly. Your whole team can share one number and respond to customers like a shared inbox. No more, who's handling this? And the AI agent handles after-hour calls, answers common questions, and captures leads so you never miss a customer again. See why over 60,000 businesses trust Open Phone. They're offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/lockedoncollege. That's openphone.com/lockedoncollege. They'll even port over your existing numbers for free. Open Phone, no missed calls, no missed customers. And Prize Picks. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the daily fantasy platform that lets you turn your football predictions into real rewards. Preseason is already heating up, and college football isn't far behind. Whether you've got your eye on big-name quarterbacks or breakout running backs, Prize Picks makes it easy to get in the game. Prize Picks is simple to play. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stats. If you get your picks right, you could cash and win up to 2,000 times your money. I've used Prize Picks for a few seasons now, and I love how simple it is. I can get a lineup in before my coffee finishes brewing. The flex play option is a total game changer. Even when one of your picks misses, you still double your money. Prize Picks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. Let's wrap up our conversation with the Troy Messenger's Josh Boutwell. We talk about covering back-to-back Sunbelt champions, and does he believe the Troy Trojans are contenders in the Sunbelt West? He is Locked On Sunbelt. Talking to Josh Boutwell from the Troy Messenger, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. All right, yeah. So, how many years have you been covering the Troy Trojans now?
Since 2017, I think.
No kidding. So
yeah, I was at the Southeast Sun and Enterprise from 2016, I think, until I came over here in 2022. But even when I was over there, I was still covering Troy football.
So there's got to be season by my math, and my understanding is that there would be no math. So we're going on 9 years.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Okay.
And I've been here, my whole life, so I've been around Troy. The first college football I ever went to was was a Troy game. So I've been here my whole life. Yeah.
All right. And so what was it like those 2 years? Because John Summerall came in. They came in on a losing record. But even Phil Steele, all right, and I remember reading that, says, watch out for Troy because they got some talent, all right? And then they went back-to-back, and they kind of did it differently, right? The first time it was running in defense, and then they let the quarterback actually, quarterback in the second year and proved to be worth his while. So what was it like watching the team evolve in John Summerall's first year to champion, and then actually doing it again the second year, but doing it differently?
Fun. That would be the best way to describe it, because it was not fun covering those games the previous 3 years. It was not fun at all. Especially that second year, because like you mentioned, the offense especially was so balanced. Gunner was, I want to say it had to have been the first time in school history, a 3,000-yard passer, a 1,000-yard receiver, a 1,000-yard rusher, and that rusher could have gone for 2,000 if they wanted him to that year. It was fun. And I consider John Summerall a friend. We still talk from time to time now. All through all my stuff, he was constantly texting me, calling my wife, all that kind of stuff. So that definitely helped when you have a good guy like that to be around. Fun is the way I would describe it, especially in comparison to the previous 3 years. It felt a lot more like when Neil Brown was here, I think, a little bit, because Neil and I would say John's definitely a little bit more personal than Neil, but they're very similar in that way. They're both personable. I don't want to bash anybody or anything, but
no, but it feels like when these coaches, and I get the idea, because both John and Neil, and I'll put Kane Womack in there. They're both young. They're all three are very young. Kane was the youngest Division I head coach. They're all very confident in their abilities. They all kind of know what they're doing, and so they all carry themselves with a certain bit of confidence. And so they're not, they all got contracts, so it doesn't matter if they get fired; they're getting paid. So they're not worried. They're not too worried about what's going to happen. They're confident in themselves that if the process plays out, at least in their head, that it's going to be successful. And so far, generally speaking, it has. Obviously, it didn't work out for Neil at his last stop because it gets more difficult at those levels. But I feel confident it'll work out the next place. And, maybe Sarkisian is going to run the Nick Saban rehab at Texas for Neil, right? And he'll get another shot somewhere else. And we'll see where John's been successful at Tulane, and he'll probably be successful, whether it be at Auburn, Arkansas, or Kentucky, his next stop, wherever that may be. And we'll see what Kane does whether he gets another job following Alabama. But that's where I kind of feel that it is, that these young guys, they are personable because, well, first of all, they, with you, I mean, that was what always upset me about Neil. I'm 15 years older than Neil. And he's coming in there first thing in the morning at Sunbelt Media Days, and he's a decade younger than me, and he's already in his third year at Troy.
Yeah, for sure. And the confidence thing, that's where I came back with Jared Parker this year, that is definitely standing out.
That's different. Yeah.
It's a lot different. And he's very much personality-wise, he reminds me a lot of John, for sure.
So that's a good question now, because a lot of these guys, they get that same AD. Now, all of a sudden, Brent Jones kind of a bombshell, and maybe we should have saw that, because because I was in and out and kind of focused on my own thing. Brent Jones wasn't around Sunbelt Media Days. And all of a sudden, like a day or two later, Brent Jones going to Georgia Tech. Did you hear of anything like that happening?
No.
Were you aware? And, so then I presume people at Troy were somewhat aware, but you still got to get a search firm up and running. And something like this takes, 2 or 3 months to get done. And so what does Jared Parker think of that process?
I mean, you could tell no one's going to like it, but
right.
He would, just talking to him, he was very appreciative of Brent. And,
Sure.
There's a lot of circumstances that I'm not going to talk about. And, Brent wanted to talk about it, just personally, it would be better for him to be closer to family and things of that nature. And I feel like everyone kind of understands that. And I for sure understand that.
Sure.
So, the success he's had, no one wants to see it happen. No one wants to have to
I was blaming him for leaving. No. I was more. This isn't about Brent. This is about all of a sudden Jared Parker going into a second year. Now they're looking for his boss.
I know, and it's actually kind of funny because there's never a good time for it to happen. But right before the season, is that the worst time, or is it maybe not as bad? Just because there's really, there's not much that you have to worry about. He's not going to be having to do any, job searches right now, which is a big plus.
Right. Basketball team just went to the NCAA tournament, right?
And Scott just resigned, so
right. The baseball team is always on the verge of going to the NCAA tournament, right? So that's in good hands, and certainly that baseball coach is not lacking for entertainment, so that's good. And they have their football coach. What's that?
Talk about personable.
Yes. I'm a big Sky. I don't get to. I'm not there as much as I would have liked to been, but I like Skylar Meade. To say the least, he does not lack confidence.
No, he does not. Never.
So I'm not dealing with him as much as other people do, but I'm a big Skylar Meade fan. Win a couple more ball games and get into the tournament. We'll leave it at that. All right. So let's talk about what expectations are for the Troy Trojans. We got Josh Boutwell on from the Troy Messenger, Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. He is on the Belt Beat. I'm not sure if it's as difficult as a schedule as some other teams. They do have Clemson. It's a trap game for Clemson. Clemson's coming off LSU, so that's got all kind of playoff implications. And then they got Georgia Tech after Troy, so they're playing a nationally important game, and then they get a conference foe afterwards. Tough spot for, it's obviously playing Clemson in Death Valley is going to be tough. We're going to find out what Troy is good at. That's always the way I see things, right? They're going to expose the weakness and help you figure out what you can improve on moving forward during the season. But what are expectations? Because I would think, let's see if we can get this team back to a bowl team. I'm not sure if it is going to contend in the Sun Belt West, but if Goose stays healthy and this team is electric and they take me up on going 5 wide tight ends, maybe they can contend in the Sun Belt West.
I don't know if Parker sees this. He's probably going to tell me to shut up. But I feel like they're for sure going to contend in the West. There's not a lot of talk about them, and I know coming out of media days, and that was one of those things, they're not thinking about that. But I can assure you, when they were picked so far down in the West, that was noted for sure. I do not feel that is going to be the case at all, and I feel like they're going to contend. Anything less than a bowl game would be a huge letdown, and I don't see that happening unless something really bad goes down during the season. I feel like they're going to surprise a lot of people. As far as that Clemson game goes, I don't think Clemson's going to be overlooking Troy after the last time they came down there. So, but that will be an interesting game. But no, I think that Troy is going to absolutely surprise some people, and they will contend for the West, in my opinion.
And they do get Memphis at home. That is on ESPNU. So that is another schedule. And they get Buffalo. And so Buffalo's been pretty good over the last few years. So there is some scheduling opportunities. When we do post that clip on social media, your buddy Summerall is going to say rat poison. He's going to take that right out of the Nick Saban thing, and he's going to clip out rat poison. That's what he's going to tell you.
For right sure. All right. That was a little rat poison, but I had to feed him a little bit before the season starts.
Is there any? Are there any positions that are open as camp is winding down?
I honestly, I don't really see that. I feel like they're confident with kind of the starters right now. I think the offensive line, they're a lot more confident this year. And a freshman starting at center is just crazy to think about. But
that is crazy.
He's been very impressive. But I think for the most part, probably the 2 deep is pretty secure right now.
All right.
Save for injuries.
All right. Well, that is okay. So his head's going to be spent. So it's a good thing they're opening up with Nichols versus Clemson for the sake of the center, the freshman center. That's a lot to handle.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a lot. That's a lot to handle. All right. So we'll see if they maybe rotate in a couple of guys just to make sure everyone's on the same page, because that's the way a quarterback gets hurt if the center's not got the line.
I think they feel pretty confident in him, though. He's been
well,
really the guy since the end of spring, which has been pretty impressive.
Well, obviously, if he's starting, then someone's got a lot of confidence in him, because that means Goose has got confidence in him. The coach has got the offensive line's got confidence in him, and obviously Coach Parker's got confidence.
And it's huge having that guy be able to step in and do that, and then let Eli Russ, who was an all-conference guard last year when he played at the guard at the end of the year, letting him stay at guard, I think is really, really big for the line.
So he's the backup center in case.
Yes. He started several games at center last year.
All right. He's Josh Boutwell. He's with the Troy Messenger. He is on the belt beat heading into year 9, covering the Troy Trojans. Always appreciate your time, Josh. Thanks for hopping on Locked On Sunbelt. Have a great season and hope to catch you up sometime during the year. Thank you so much for hopping on Locked On Sunbelt.
It's my pleasure. Anytime.